The stage rattled into Buffalo, Wyoming territory, on a blistering afternoon in August of 1883. And through the dust-caked window, Theresa Kensington watched a lone cowboy pull a stumbling drunk from the middle of the street just before the horses would have trampled him. She pressed her gloved hand against the glass, convinced she was about to witness another soul destroyed by whiskey and desperation. But then the cowboy steadied the man with surprising gentleness, spoke something that made the drunk laugh, and pointed him toward the boardwalk with a firm but kind hand on his shoulder. Her traveling companion, Mrs. Abernathy, a stout woman who had talked ceaselessly since Cheyenne, finally paused her monologue about her daughters waiting to peer out as well. "That would be Nathan Miller," she said with a knowing nod. "Fine rancher, that one. Lost his wife 3 years back to fever. Everyone in town has been trying to marry him off ever since, but he just keeps to himself mostly. Helps folks when they need it, minds his own business otherwise." Theresa felt something stir in her chest, a familiar pull she recognized from her years working with the Boston Ladies' Aid Society. Here was another person in need, she thought, another widower living half a life, probably drowning in grief and loneliness. She had come west to start a school, to bring education and enlightenment to this rough territory, but perhaps she could help this man too. After all, that was what she did. She helped people. The stage lurched to a stop in front of the Buffalo Hotel, and Theresa gathered her carpetbag and reticule. She was 24 years old, had never been married, and had scandalized her entire Boston family by insisting on this venture. Her mother had wept, her father had threatened to disown her, and her eldest brother had called her foolish. But Theresa had inherited her grandmother's small fortune and with it, her independence. She would make something of herself out here, something meaningful. As she stepped down from the stage, her boot caught on her hem and she pitched forward, certain she would land face first in the dirt. Instead, strong hands caught her shoulders, steadying her with easy confidence. She looked up into the tanned face of the cowboy she had just been watching, and up close, she could see that Nathan Miller had eyes the color of creek water in summer, green, brown, and clear, with fine lines at the corners that spoke of years squinting into the sun. "Careful there, miss," he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to come from somewhere deep in his chest. "Buffalo's dusty enough without you testing it firsthand." "Thank you," Theresa said, straightening her traveling suit and trying to regain her dignity. "I am quite grateful for your quick reflexes." He released her shoulders and stepped back, touching the brim of his hat. "Welcome to Buffalo. You here visiting or staying a spell?" "Staying," she said, lifting her chin. "I am Theresa Kensington, and I have come to establish a school. I understand the territorial government has approved the funding, and I am to meet with the town council tomorrow morning." Something flickered across Nathan's face, too quick for her to read, but then he smiled, a slow, easy expression that softened his weathered features. "Well then, Miss Kensington, I reckon Buffalo's lucky to have you. We have been needing a proper school for some time now. My foreman's got 3 young ones who have been learning what they can from their mother, but she would be the first to say she is no teacher." Mrs. Abernathy had descended from the stage and was already directing the driver about her luggage. She spotted Nathan and Theresa talking and bustled over with an expression of poorly concealed delight. "Nathan Miller, I see you have met our new schoolteacher. Miss Kensington, you could not have found a better man to assist you if you tried. Nathan sits on the town council, and he donated the land for the schoolhouse himself." Theresa looked at Nathan with renewed interest. "You are on the council. Then I shall see you tomorrow morning." "You will," he confirmed. 9 o'clock at the town hall. It is not much to look at, but it serves its purpose." He excused himself then, touching his hat brim again and walking toward a sturdy bay horse tied at the hitching post. Theresa watched him mount with the unconscious grace of a man who had spent more time in the saddle than out of it, and she felt that pull again, that certainty that here was someone who needed help whether he knew it or not. The hotel was modest but clean, and the proprietor, a cheerful man named Mr. Dawson, showed her to a small room on the second floor with a window overlooking the main street. After he left, Theresa unpacked her few belongings and stood at the window, watching the town go about its evening business. She saw Nathan Miller again, this time helping an elderly woman carry her parcels to a wagon. He seemed to be everywhere, quietly assisting, never making a fuss about it. Yes, she thought. He is one of those rare souls who gives everything to others and keeps nothing for himself. He probably has not properly grieved his wife. He probably throws himself into helping everyone else to avoid his own pain. She did not recognize the irony of her thoughts. The next morning, Theresa dressed in her most professional outfit, a deep blue dress with a high collar and neat buttons, and made her way to the town hall. It was indeed a humble building, just a large room with a few benches and a table at the front where 5 men sat waiting. Nathan was among them, she was pleased to note, looking freshly shaved and wearing a clean shirt under his leather vest. The meeting went well. The council approved her credentials, showed her the building that would serve as the school, a former storage house that needed cleaning and some repairs, but had good bones and plenty of light, and discussed her salary and living arrangements. They offered her the small cabin behind the schoolhouse, currently empty and in need of some work, but livable. "I can get some men together to fix up that cabin for you," Nathan said after the meeting concluded. "The roof needs patching, and I suspect the stove will need looking at. Give us a few days and we will have it ready." "That is very kind of you, Mr. Miller," Theresa said, "but I could not possibly ask you to go to such trouble." "You did not ask," he pointed out, those creek water eyes holding a hint of amusement. "I offered. There is a difference." Over the next week, Theresa watched Nathan Miller organize the work on her cabin with the same quiet efficiency he seemed to bring to everything. He did much of the labor himself, arriving at dawn with tools and lumber, working steadily through the day. Other men came and went, offering a few hours here and there, but Nathan was always there, measuring, hammering, carefully replacing rotted boards. Theresa tried to help, of course. She insisted on cleaning the interior, scrubbing years of dust and grime from the windows and floors. On the third day, she brought lunch for the workers, sandwiches and cold buttermilk, and Nathan accepted his portion with a nod of thanks before settling on the cabin steps to eat. She sat down beside him, uninvited but determined. "You work very hard, Mr. Miller." "Work that needs doing is worth doing right," he said simply. "Mrs. Abernathy told me you lost your wife," Theresa ventured, keeping her voice gentle. "I am very sorry for your loss." Nathan was quiet for a long moment, chewing his sandwich thoughtfully. "Thank you," he said finally. "Sarah was a good woman. It was a hard time losing her." 3 years, she said. "That is right." Theresa took a breath, choosing her words carefully. "Grief is a heavy burden to carry alone, Mr. Miller. Have you considered, that is, perhaps you might benefit from talking with someone about your feelings? I have some experience with bereavement counseling. In Boston, I worked with many people who had suffered losses." Nathan turned to look at her fully, and something in his expression made her falter. It was not grief she saw there, not the raw pain of unprocessed loss. It was simply calm acceptance, the quiet peace of someone who had walked through fire and come out whole on the other side. "Miss Kensington," he said, and his voice was kind but firm. "I appreciate your concern, but I have done my grieving. I loved Sarah with everything I had, and when she died, I mourned her proper. But she would not want me to stop living, and I have not. I keep busy because I like being useful, not because I am running from anything." Theresa felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I did not mean to presume." "You did not offend me," Nathan assured her. "You have got a good heart. I can see that. You want to help people, and that is admirable. But sometimes the help folks need is not what we think they need." He stood then, brushing crumbs from his pants, and got back to work. Theresa sat on the steps a moment longer, feeling oddly chastened and confused. She had been so certain that Nathan was another person she could fix, another soul she could save from suffering. But he had not seemed like someone who needed saving at all. The cabin was finished by the end of the week, and Theresa moved in with her few possessions. The school was scheduled to open in 2 weeks, giving her time to prepare lessons and advertise to the families in the area. Nathan helped her move her trunk and bags, carrying them as easily as if they weighed nothing. "Thank you for everything you have done," Theresa said as he prepared to leave. "I know I tried to. Well, I know I misjudged you, Mr. Miller. You seem quite content with your life." Nathan smiled, that slow, warm expression that made his whole face change. "I am content," he agreed, "but that does not mean my life could not be fuller. I have learned that there is a difference between being at peace with your past and being closed off to your future." He left before she could ask what he meant by that, riding off toward his ranch in the fading evening light. The school opened on a Monday morning in early September with 11 students ranging in age from 6 to 14. Theresa threw herself into teaching with all the passion and energy she possessed. She loved the work, loved seeing young minds open to new ideas, loved the challenge of managing different ages and abilities in one room. Nathan's foreman brought his 3 children, 2 boys and a girl, and they were bright and eager despite their limited previous education. Theresa also had the children of shopkeepers, a rancher's daughter, the blacksmith's son, and several others. They were good children, rough around the edges perhaps, but respectful and hungry to learn. Nathan stopped by occasionally, always with some practical excuse, bringing firewood for the stove, checking on a loose board in the schoolhouse floor, delivering a box of slates that the council had ordered. Theresa began to look forward to these visits more than she cared to admit. He would sit at the back of the room sometimes, watching her teach with an expression of quiet interest, and afterward they would talk about the students' progress or some detail of the school's operation. But gradually, their conversations expanded beyond strictly educational topics. Nathan told her about his ranch, the challenges of raising cattle in Wyoming's harsh climate, the satisfaction of building something lasting. Theresa found herself sharing stories from Boston, her work with the Ladies' Aid Society, her family's shock at her Western venture. "Why did you really come out here?" Nathan asked one afternoon as they sat on the schoolhouse steps, watching the last of the children head home. "It is more than just wanting to teach, I think." Theresa considered the question seriously. "In Boston, I felt useless," she said finally. "I mean, I did charitable work, and it was important, but it always felt like I was just putting bandages on wounds that never healed. I wanted to do something that would make a real difference. Education, real education that can change lives, that can break cycles of poverty and ignorance. Out here I thought I could truly matter. And do you? Matter, I mean." "I hope so," she said. "Although I am learning that things are different out here than I expected. People are more resilient than I gave them credit for, more capable of handling their own problems." Nathan chuckled. "You thought you would ride in like a knight in shining armor and rescue a bunch of helpless Westerners. When you put it like that, it sounds terribly arrogant," Theresa admitted, smiling despite herself. Not arrogant, Nathan said. Just maybe a little short-sighted. People out here are tough because they have to be. But that does not mean they do not need help sometimes. They just need the right kind of help, from someone who respects their strength instead of pitying their weakness. Theresa looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something she had missed before. Nathan Miller was not just a kind cowboy who helped people out of obligation or habit. He was someone who understood human nature at a deep level, who saw clearly what others needed and offered it without fanfare or expectation of gratitude. He was, she realized with a start, far wiser than she had given him credit for. "You are a very perceptive man, Mr. Miller," she said softly. "Call me Nathan," he said. "I think we have known each other long enough for first names, do not you, Theresa?" The way he said her name, with that low rumble of a voice and a hint of warmth, made something flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with her desire to help him. Autumn settled over Buffalo with golden aspens and crisp mornings. Theresa established a routine of teaching during the week and spending Sundays at the small church in town, where she met more of the community. Nathan was often there too, sitting in the same pew toward the back, and somehow they fell into the habit of walking back to her cabin together afterward, talking about everything and nothing. One Sunday in late October, as they walked beneath trees dropping yellow leaves like coins, Nathan said, "There is a harvest dance next Saturday at the town hall. I was wondering if you might allow me to escort you." Theresa's heart skipped. "A dance? Nothing fancy," Nathan said quickly. "Just folks gathering, some music, food, a chance to celebrate before winter sets in. But I would like to take you if you are willing." "I would like that very much," Theresa said, and she was surprised by how much she meant it. The week leading up to the dance seemed to drag endlessly. Theresa found herself distracted during lessons, her thoughts wandering to Nathan and the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. She had come west to make a difference, to help people, to build something meaningful. She had not expected to feel this way about anyone, this warm anticipation, this constant awareness of another person. Mrs. Abernathy, who had appointed herself Theresa's unofficial guardian and gossip source, was delighted when she heard about the dance. "I knew it," she declared when Theresa stopped by her house to ask about what women typically wore to such events. "I told Mr. Abernathy the very day you arrived that you and Nathan Miller would make a fine match. He is a good man, dear, one of the best. And he has not looked at a woman the way he looks at you since before Sarah died." "We are just friends," Theresa protested weakly. "Of course you are, dear," Mrs. Abernathy said with a knowing smile. "Just friends who cannot stop looking at each other, who talk for hours after church, who light up like lanterns whenever the other walks into a room. Just friends indeed." Saturday evening arrived, and Theresa dressed in her best gown, a deep green silk she had brought from Boston. When Nathan arrived to collect her, driving a clean wagon with cushions on the seat, she saw his eyes widen slightly. "You look beautiful," he said simply, offering his hand to help her up. "Thank you," she said, feeling her cheeks warm. "You look very handsome yourself." He did, too, in a dark suit that fit him well, his hair neatly combed, his boots polished. As they drove toward town, the setting sun painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Theresa felt a profound sense of rightness, as if this moment was exactly where she was supposed to be. The town hall was transformed, decorated with branches of autumn leaves and lit by dozens of lanterns. Someone had brought a fiddle, another a guitar, and soon music filled the air. Families clustered around tables laden with food, children ran and played, and couples moved through the simple steps of country dances. Nathan introduced Theresa to people she had not yet met, ranchers from outlying areas, Families who lived too far from town to send their children to daily school, but who hoped to work something out come winter. Everyone was friendly, welcoming, and Theresa felt herself relaxing into the warmth of community in a way she never had in Boston's more formal social circles. When the music shifted to a slower tune, Nathan offered his hand. "May I have this dance?" They moved together across the floor, and Theresa was struck by how natural it felt to be in his arms. Nathan was a surprisingly good dancer, leading with quiet confidence, and she found herself following his steps without thinking, simply enjoying the movement and the music and his nearness. "I need to tell you something," Nathan said as they swayed together. "I was not entirely honest with you before." Theresa looked up at him, concerned. "About what?" "When you said I seemed content with my life, I agreed, and that was true as far as it went. But the whole truth is that I have been content because I did not know what I was missing. These past couple of months, getting to know you, talking with you, seeing the way you care about your students and this town, it has made me realize that contentment is not the same as happiness. I was content in my solitude, but I am happier when I am with you." Theresa's breath caught. "Nathan, I do not know what to say." "You do not have to say anything right now," he said gently. "I just wanted you to know I care about you, Theresa, more than I expected to care about anyone again. And I think, if I am not entirely fooling myself, that you might care about me too." "I do," she admitted, the words coming easier than she expected. "I came here thinking I knew exactly what I wanted, what I was meant to do. I saw you as another project, another person who needed my help, and I am sorry for that. But somewhere along the way, you stopped being a project and became, well, you became everything I did not know I needed." Nathan smiled, that slow, warm expression that made her heart flip. "Maybe that is the thing about needing each other," he said. "It is not about one person saving the other. It is about two people making each other's lives better just by being in them." They danced until late, and when Nathan drove her home under a canopy of stars so bright they seemed close enough to touch, Theresa felt as if her entire world had shifted on its axis. At her door, Nathan took her hand and raised it to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "May I call on you proper?" he asked. "Court you the way a woman like you deserves?" "Yes," Theresa said, smiling up at him. "I would like that very much." The courtship that followed was unlike anything Theresa had experienced in Boston, where young men had pursued her with stilted formality and transparent interest in her inheritance. Nathan courted her with quiet sincerity, showing up at her cabin with wildflowers he had picked on his morning ride, bringing her books he thought she might enjoy, teaching her to ride a horse properly so she could explore the countryside beyond Buffalo. In return, Theresa shared her world with him, reading aloud from her favorite novels in the evenings, teaching him about the educational theories she found so fascinating, cooking meals that were sometimes successful and sometimes disasters that left them both laughing. They talked for hours about everything under the sun, discovering shared values and complementary differences, learning each other's stories and dreams. Winter came early that year, sweeping down from the mountains with bitter winds and heavy snow. The school continued, though some of the children from distant ranches could not attend during the worst weather. Nathan made sure Theresa had plenty of firewood, checked on her regularly, and invited her to Sunday dinners at his ranch, where she met his small household staff and saw the life he had built. His ranch was impressive, a testament to years of hard work and careful management. The main house was solid and well built, with a large fireplace and comfortable furniture. Nathan showed her the barn where he kept his horses, introduced her to his foreman Tom, whose children attended her school, and explained his plans for expanding the herd in the spring. "Sarah and I built this together," he said as they stood on the porch, looking out over the snowy fields. "She was a partner in every sense, worked as hard as any man. When she died, I thought about selling, starting over somewhere else. But this place, it has got our sweat and dreams soaked into every board and fence post. I could not let it go." "I am glad you did not," Theresa said, slipping her gloved hand into his. "It is beautiful, Nathan. You should be proud of what you have built." "What we built," he corrected gently. "Sarah deserves that credit. But I hope, maybe, if things go the way I am hoping they will, that you might want to build something here too, with me." Theresa looked up at him, her heart full. "Are you asking me something, Nathan Miller?" "Not yet," he said, smiling. "But I am letting you know that I am going to. When the time is right, when we have had enough time to be sure, I am going to ask you to marry me, Theresa Kensington. And I wanted you to know that so you can think about it, prepare yourself for the question." "That is the strangest proposal warning I have ever heard," Theresa said, laughing. "Have you had many proposal warnings then?" "Well, no," she admitted. "But if I had, I am certain none would have been quite like that." As winter deepened, Theresa found herself thinking often about Nathan's words. The idea of marriage had always seemed distant, something that would require her to give up her independence and her work. But Nathan did not ask her to give up anything. He supported her teaching, encouraged her ambitions, and seemed to genuinely enjoy the person she was, not some idealized version she was supposed to become. Christmas came, and the town held a celebration at the church. Theresa's students performed a small pageant she had helped them prepare, and Nathan sat in the front row, beaming with pride as if they were his own children. Afterward, he pulled her aside and presented her with a small wrapped package. Inside was a beautiful leather-bound journal, the kind she had admired in the general store weeks earlier but had not purchased, thinking it too extravagant. "For your thoughts," Nathan said. "You are always thinking, planning, dreaming. I thought you should have a nice place to write it all down." Theresa felt tears prick her eyes. "Nathan, this is too much." "It is exactly right," he said firmly. "You are exactly right, Theresa. For me, for this place, for everything. I know I said I would wait to ask, but I do not think I can wait any longer. Marry me, be my wife. Let us build a life together." Around them, the celebration continued, but Theresa was aware of nothing except Nathan's face, earnest and hopeful, and the feeling of absolute certainty that flooded through her. "Yes," she said, smiling through happy tears. "Yes, Nathan, I will marry you." He kissed her then, gentle and sweet, and someone nearby must have noticed because suddenly there was cheering and congratulations, and they were surrounded by smiling faces and warm wishes. They were married in February, in the same small church where they had walked together after services, where their friendship had deepened into love. Theresa wore a simple white dress that Mrs. Abernathy helped her sew, and Nathan wore his best suit. Tom stood as his best man, and Mrs. Abernathy stood with Theresa, crying happy tears throughout the ceremony. After the wedding, there was a reception at the town hall with food and music and dancing. But eventually, Nathan and Theresa slipped away, driving through the snowy evening to his ranch, which was now theirs together. That night, as they lay together in the big bed in the main house, Theresa felt a peace she had never known before. "I thought I came here to save people," she said softly, her head resting on Nathan's chest. "I was so sure I knew what everyone needed." "You did save people," Nathan said, running his fingers through her hair. "Those children you teach, you are changing their lives. You give them possibilities they would not have had otherwise." "But not you," Theresa said. "You did not need saving." "No," Nathan agreed. "But I needed you all the same. We needed each other, Theresa." That is what I saw from the beginning, from that first day when you stepped off the stage with your determined eyes and your big plans to fix everyone. I saw a woman who was so busy trying to help everyone else that she had not noticed she was running from her own loneliness. Theresa was quiet, absorbing this truth. I was lonely, she admitted. In Boston, surrounded by family and society, I was desperately lonely. I thought if I could just do enough good, help enough people, that would fill the emptiness. And then you came here and tried to do the same thing, Nathan said gently. You saw me as another project, another lonely soul to rescue, but I had already walked through my grief and come out whole. What I was alone. Not lonely, not broken, just alone, and there is a difference. There is, Theresa agreed, understanding now what she had not seen before. I was lonely because I was isolated, even in a crowd. You were alone because you had not yet found the right person to share your life with again. Exactly, Nathan said, kissing the top of her head. And somehow we found each other. You needed someone who would see your strength and not just your desire to help. I needed someone who would challenge me, make me think, bring new energy and ideas into my life. We needed each other, Theresa, not to be saved, but to be complete. Spring came, and with it, new life in every sense. Theresa continued teaching, though now she rode to school from the ranch each morning, often with Nathan accompanying her part of the way before he headed to his own work. They fell into a comfortable rhythm, each supporting the other's endeavors, sharing their days in the evenings, building their life together with the same care Nathan had once put into repairing her cabin. In May, Theresa discovered she was expecting a child. The news filled her with joy and terror in equal measure. Nathan was delighted, already planning additions to the house to accommodate their growing family. Mrs. Abernathy appointed herself an expert advisor, despite having only one daughter herself, and Tom's wife, Maria, offered practical help and reassurance. Theresa taught through the early months of her pregnancy, finally taking leave when the school year ended in June. The summer stretched long and lazy, and she spent her days reading, preparing for the baby, and helping Nathan with ranch business when she could. Their son was born in January of 1885, during a fierce snowstorm that kept the doctor from arriving in time. Maria helped deliver the baby, and Nathan held Theresa's hand through it all, steady and calm even when Theresa was certain she could not manage another moment. They named him Samuel, after Nathan's father, and he was a healthy, loud baby with Nathan's eyes and Theresa's dark hair. Watching Nathan with their son, gentle and patient and full of wonder, Theresa fell in love with her husband all over again. Life settled into a new pattern, fuller and busier than before. Theresa returned to teaching in the fall, with Maria caring for Samuel during school hours. The arrangement worked well, and Theresa found she could balance motherhood and her teaching work, though it required more organization than she had imagined. Over the next few years, their family grew. A daughter arrived in 1887, whom they named Lucy, and another son, James, in 1889. The house expanded to accommodate them all, and the ranch prospered under Nathan's careful management. Theresa's school became a cornerstone of the community, educating 2 generations of Buffalo's children. She hired an assistant teacher as enrollment grew, and together they built a curriculum that prepared students for whatever futures they might choose, whether that meant staying in Wyoming or venturing to cities for further education. Through it all, Nathan was her partner in the truest sense. He supported her work, encouraged her ambitions, and shared equally in raising their children. In turn, Theresa learned to manage the ranch's business side, keeping books and handling correspondence, freeing Nathan to focus on the land and cattle he loved. They faced challenges, of course. There were harsh winters that decimated the herd, years when money was tight, illness that swept through the family and the town. But they faced everything together, their partnership strengthened by each trial weathered, each problem solved through mutual support and trust. On their 10th anniversary, Nathan surprised Theresa with a trip to Cheyenne, their first real time away from the ranch and children since they had married. They stayed in a hotel, ate in restaurants, attended a theater performance, and walked the city streets like young sweethearts. "Do you ever regret it?" Nathan asked one evening as they sat in the hotel dining room. "Giving up Boston, your family, the life you could have had back east?" Theresa reached across the table and took his hand. "Not for a single moment," she said truthfully. "I thought I was coming west to save people, to make a difference through sheer force of will and determination. I was so arrogant, thinking I could fix everyone's problems. But you taught me that the best way to help people is not to save them, but to walk alongside them. To offer support without taking away their dignity. To recognize that sometimes we need help, and sometimes we are the help someone else needs, and most often, it is both at once." Nathan smiled, that familiar warm expression that still made her heart flutter after a decade together. "You were not arrogant," he said. "You were idealistic, and that idealism, tempered with wisdom, has made you an extraordinary teacher and an even more extraordinary partner. You have made my life so much richer, Theresa. You and our children, you are everything I did not know I was missing." "We needed each other," Theresa said softly. "You saw that from the beginning, did not you? When I was so busy trying to figure out how to help the poor lonely widower, you already knew that we were both incomplete, both looking for something without realizing it." "I had an advantage," Nathan admitted. "I had already learned that lesson through losing Sarah. I knew what it meant to be whole with someone, and I knew what it felt like to be alone afterward. So when you arrived, all bristling determination and kind intentions, I could see clearly what you were running from and what we both might find together." As they grew older, Nathan and Theresa became the kind of couple that younger people pointed to as an example of what marriage could be. They still sat together on the porch in the evenings, talking about their days, planning for the future, simply enjoying each other's company. They still held hands at church, still danced at town gatherings, still looked at each other with the kind of love that had only deepened with time. Samuel grew into a serious young man who loved the ranch and learning in equal measure. He attended university in Colorado, studying agricultural science, then returned to help his father modernize the ranch's operations. Lucy inherited her mother's passion for teaching and eventually took over running the school when Theresa finally retired at age 55. James became a veterinarian, setting up practice in Buffalo and caring for the animals throughout the region. Theresa watched her children build their own lives with pride and satisfaction. She had given them education, opportunity, and the example of a strong, loving partnership. She had also taught them the lesson she had learned so long ago, that helping others was not about fixing them, but about respecting their strength while offering support. On their 30th anniversary, the whole town turned out for a celebration. Nathan and Theresa sat at the head table in the town hall, now a much larger building than the simple structure where they had first danced together, and listened to speeches and toasts, celebrating their contributions to Buffalo. Tom, now retired from ranch work but still a close friend, stood to speak. When Nathan first saw Theresa step off that stage 30 years ago, he came to me that evening and said something I have never forgotten. He said, "Tom, I just met a woman who thinks I need saving, but I reckon we are going to save each other instead." And he was right. These two people, they made each other better. They made all of us better. Here is to 30 more years. The crowd cheered, and Theresa felt tears on her cheeks. She looked at Nathan, who was looking back at her with those creek water eyes, still clear though surrounded now by deeper lines, his hair silver instead of brown. "What do you think?" he asked, leaning close to be heard over the noise. "Can you put up with me for 30 more?" "At least," Theresa said, kissing his cheek. "At least 30 more." They did not get quite 30 more years, but they got close. Nathan passed away peacefully in his sleep at age 78, surrounded by his family in the house he had built, on the land he had loved. Theresa grieved him deeply, but she did not break. She had learned from him, after all, that grief and peace could coexist, that you could honor what you had lost while still embracing what remained. She lived another 5 years after Nathan's passing, staying in the ranch house that held so many memories, visiting her children and growing number of grandchildren, and occasionally teaching special lessons at the school when Lucy requested her help. On a warm summer evening in 1924, Theresa sat on the porch where she and Nathan had spent so many hours together. She was 85 years old, and she felt every one of those years in her bones, but her mind was still sharp, her memories vivid and precious. Lucy sat beside her, keeping her mother company as the sun set over the mountains. "What are you thinking about, Mama?" she asked. "Your father," Theresa said softly. "And the day I arrived in Buffalo, I was so young, so certain I knew everything. I saw your father help a drunk man in the street, and I thought, there is someone who needs my help. I had no idea that I was the one who needed help, that I was running from my own fears and loneliness by trying to fix everyone else." "Papa saw it, though," Lucy said. "He told me once that he knew from the first conversation you had that you were both looking for the same thing, even if you did not realize it yet." "He was wiser than I gave him credit for," Theresa agreed. "He knew we needed each other, not to be saved, not to be fixed, but to be complete. And he was patient enough to let me figure that out for myself." "You had a great love," Lucy said, taking her mother's hand. "The kind most people only dream about." "We did," Theresa agreed. "And do you know what the foundation of that love was? Mutual respect. Your father never tried to change me, and I learned not to try to change him. We helped each other become better versions of ourselves, but we did it by supporting, not by fixing. That is the secret, Lucy. Love is not about saving someone. It is about walking beside them, being their partner, their friend, their safe harbor. It is about needing each other in all the right ways." Lucy squeezed her mother's hand, understanding in a way she perhaps had not before. Theresa passed away peacefully that night in her sleep, with a smile on her face. Her children found her the next morning and knew, somehow, that she had gone to find Nathan again, to continue the partnership that death had only briefly interrupted. At her funeral, the church was packed with former students, now grown with children and grandchildren of their own. They spoke of how Theresa had changed their lives, given them opportunities, believed in them when others had not. They spoke of her dedication, her intelligence, her kindness. But Samuel, speaking for the family, told a different story. He talked about the partnership his parents had modeled, the way they had built a life together based on mutual respect and genuine need for each other. He talked about how his mother had come west thinking she would save people, but had instead learned that the greatest thing she could do was allow herself to be saved in return, to admit her own needs and accept help from others. "My father used to say that my mother thought he needed help," Samuel told the gathered crowd. "But the wise cowboy knew they needed each other all along, and in learning to need each other, they taught all of us what real love looks like. Not dramatic rescues or grand gestures, but steady partnership, mutual support, and the daily choice to walk through life side by side." The crowd was silent, moved by words that captured a truth about the couple they had all admired. Theresa was buried beside Nathan on a hill overlooking the ranch, with the mountains rising behind them and the plains stretching endlessly before them. The headstone was simple, bearing both their names and the dates of their two short lives, but beneath those facts was an inscription that Samuel had chosen carefully. It read, "They needed each other, and in that need they found everything." Years later, when people in Buffalo told stories about the old days, they always mentioned Nathan and Theresa Miller. They talked about the school she had built, the ranch he had expanded, the children they had raised. But mostly, they talked about the love those two had shared, the kind of partnership that seemed rare and precious, built not on one person saving the other, but on two people choosing to walk through life together, supporting each other, challenging each other, and making each other whole. The school Theresa founded still stood, though it had been expanded and modernized over the decades. In the entrance hall hung a portrait of her, painted from a photograph taken on her 50th birthday. In it, she sat on the porch of the ranch house, Nathan standing behind her with his hand on her shoulder, both of them smiling at the camera with the kind of contentment that came from a life well lived and a love well earned. And if you looked closely at Nathan's face in that portrait, you could see what Theresa had eventually learned to see, not a man who needed help or saving, but a wise cowboy who understood that the best things in life came not from independence or self-sufficiency, but from the courage to need someone else and the grace to let yourself be needed in return. Their great-grandchildren grew up hearing the story of how Theresa arrived in Buffalo intending to save everyone, and instead found the one person who saw her clearly enough to know that what she needed was not to be a savior, but to be a partner. They learned that true strength was not in never needing help, but in recognizing when you did and accepting it with gratitude. They learned that love was not about completing someone who was incomplete, but about two whole people choosing to build something together that was greater than either could create alone. And in learning those lessons, passed down through generations, the wisdom of a cowboy who had known all along what a determined young woman from Boston had to discover for herself continued to shape lives and hearts, a legacy as enduring as the land itself, and as powerful as the love that had created it.